Medieval love spells, real magic from forbidden grimoires. Picture this. You're holding a book, its pages so old they might crumble at a touch. And this book? It whispers secrets of a power so huge, so desperately wanted, that people in medieval Europe would risk everything. Torture, being cast out by the church, even a gruesome death, just to get their hands on it. They weren't after gold, or land, or armies. They wanted something far more potent, the power to control love. What if a few hushed words, a carefully made charm, could actually make someone fall for you? Sounds like a fairy tale, right? But this was the dangerous truth of medieval love magic. So, medieval Europe. You think of knights, castles, and a whole lot of religion, right? But beneath that surface, in the shadows, magic was very much alive. And it wasn't just bedtime stories. For a lot of folks, magic felt real, a genuine way to get a handle on a pretty unpredictable world. And the most tempting magic of all? Love magic. But chasing that kind of power? That was playing with fire, big time. The church was the top dog, and it wasn't a fan. Most magic was seen as silly superstition or worse, devil worship. Get caught with a grimoire, basically a spell book, and you were in deep trouble. Still, that craving for love, for connection, for some control over those wild human emotions, it often beat out the fear. So people hunted down forbidden books, muttered spells in secret, and collected some seriously weird ingredients, all because they were desperate to capture someone's heart. Section 1. The Forbidden Tomes. Whispers from the Key of Solomon and Picatrix. When we talk about these forbidden books, two names always pop up, the Key of Solomon and the Picatrix. And these weren't your grandma's book of herbal teas. They were serious, heavy-duty, and dangerous texts. To make them sound even more legit and mysterious, they were often said to be written by legendary figures. Take the Key of Solomon. Legend had it that wise King Solomon himself wrote it. It was basically an A to Z guide for ritual magic. Think complex ceremonies, hitting the right astrological times and calling on spirits. It covered all sorts of things, from finding buried treasure to becoming invisible. But the bits about love and winning someone over? Those were really popular. Just owning this book meant you were messing with powers the church definitely didn't approve of. Its reputation alone could make people nervous. Then you had the Picatrix, which had an even wilder, maybe spookier vibe. It started out as an Arabic text called Gayat al-Hakam, the aim of the sage, and got translated into Latin in the 13th century for King Alfonso the Wise of Castile. The Picatrix was packed with astrological magic, alchemy, and how to make powerful talismans. It taught you how to channel planetary powers, create charms, and mix potent potions for all sorts of goals, including, you guessed it, snagging a lover or sparking passion. Its spells often needed super specific star alignments, and let's be honest, some pretty disturbing ingredients. It blurred the lines between what they called natural magic and something darker. The Picatrix was supposedly for the philosophus perfectus, the perfect philosopher, someone who'd mastered tons of knowledge, but the church saw its contents as incredibly dangerous. If you had this book, you could easily be branded a sorcerer, a heretic, someone in cahoots with forbidden forces. These grimoires weren't cheap, and they weren't for scaredy cats. They were often handwritten, copied with painstaking care, and sometimes beautifully bound, precious, guarded secrets. People knew the risks. They hid them under floorboards in secret nooks, or disguised them as boring old books. They had to. The church was always watching, and getting caught could mean disaster. Section 2. The Allure of Love. Unveiling the Spells. So, what exactly did these forbidden books promise? What kind of love spells made people risk their necks? Well, they ran the gamut, from stuff that seemed fairly harmless to things that were downright manipulative, often mixing old folk magic with complicated rituals and astrology. Let's peek at what these texts were whispering. The Picatrix, for instance, laid out clear instructions for making love talismans or figures. One spell, to place love between two people, had you? Fashion two images with the first face of Cancer rising, and Venus therein, and the moon in the first face of Taurus in the 11th house. And when you have made these images, join each to the other face to face, and bury them in the house of the other. And they will care for each other and have an enduring love between them. See? Astrology was a huge deal in the Picatrix. Getting the timing and the planets lined up just right was as vital as the objects themselves. These figures, usually wax or metal, were meant to create a magical link to the people involved. The Key of Solomon wasn't short on ways to win someone's heart either. Its spells often involved making pentacles, those intricate magical symbols, drawn up at very specific planetary hours. Then, these would be blessed through prayers and chants, sometimes calling on names of angels or spirits thought to handle matters of love. The rituals themselves often demanded that the spellcaster purify themselves, use special tools like a blessed knife and wand, and burn specific incenses to set the mood and please whatever entities they were calling on. Now the ingredients for love magic, that's where things could get really weird and sometimes pretty gross. You had your usual suspects, herbs like rose petals, lavender, or verbena, all thought to have romantic powers. People carried stones like beryl to boost love in marriage. But then there was the darker side. Animal parts were common. A dove's heart for love, or even more unsettling, things like bat's blood, or those powdered swallows we heard about. And bodily bits, hair, nails, blood, even menstrual blood, were believed to forge a super strong, almost unbreakable bond by directly tying the spell to the people themselves. There was even one particularly horrifying spell from that era, though not always directly from these specific grimoires in every version, that called for the bone marrow and spleen of a murdered boy for maximum effect. Now, such extreme examples were probably rare, used by the truly desperate or twisted, but they show just how far some were willing to go. What were people trying to achieve with these spells? All sorts of things. Some wanted to attract a new flame. Others wanted to make sure their spouse stayed faithful. A big deal in a society where a woman's security often hinged on her husband's loyalty. There were also spells to bring back lost love, or even to break up couples. And the language in many of these spells, it wasn't about gentle persuasion. It was about binding or compelling the target. The line between attracting love and forcing it was incredibly blurry, and that's something the church and the authorities found really disturbing. Section 3. The price of power. Deadly consequences. So you're dabbling in this forbidden art, maybe even just hiding one of these books. What happens if you get caught? Well, it meant living with the constant fear of being found out and facing some truly brutal punishment. Accusations of witchcraft or heresy flew easily, especially as the Middle Ages wore on and the church got tougher on magic. Early on, some simple folk magic might just get you some penance, especially if no one got hurt and you weren't, say, a priest. The Burgundian penitential, for instance, was a bit lighter on love magic if it didn't cause harm, but much harsher if clergy were involved. But as fear and paranoia cranked up, particularly around stuff like summoning spirits or making deals with demons, which were front and center in grimoires like the Key of Solomon and Picatrix, any tolerance just evaporated. And it wasn't just the church. Secular rulers laid down harsh laws too. Way back in 789, Charlemagne declared that magicians had to repent or die. King Roger II of Sicily punished love magic, whether it caused harm or not. And the punishments? They could be horrific. Torture was standard practice to get confessions, often leading people to admit to all sorts of wild things, which only fed the panic. If you were found guilty of serious magical crimes, you could be burned at the stake, a nasty symbolic way to purify a heretic's soul and scare everyone else straight, or hanged. Even if you escaped execution, being branded a witch or sorcerer meant social death. You became an outcast. Neighbors would shun you, you'd lose your job, and your family could be shamed for generations. Women were especially easy targets for accusations of love magic, fitting the stereotype of using dark arts to trap men or hurt rivals. But men, particularly educated clergy who dabbled in learned magic, weren't safe either. The idea that women might use their own hair or menstrual blood in spells, that really got the clergy worked up. The Grimoires themselves? Authorities were terrified of them. Books like the Ars Notoria, which was part of the Lesser Key of Solomon, were fiercely condemned by the church. Yet they kept circulating, which tells you both how powerful people thought they were and the massive risks they were taking. Owning one was practically proof you'd made a deal with dark forces, that you'd deliberately turned your back on God. That silk-bound spellbook stashed under your mattress wasn't just a private hobby. It was damning evidence, a silent confession to a life lived right on the edge of ruin. Section 4. Why risk it all? So with these horrifying consequences hanging over their heads, why on earth did so many medieval folks risk everything for a love spell? Well, the reasons are as messy and human as love itself. Think about it. Life back then was often short, harsh, and strictly controlled by social rules. Love could be one of the very few ways to feel like you had some say in your own life, some genuine happiness. For women especially, who often had zero choice in who they married or how their relationships went, love magic might have felt like the only tool they had to steer their own romantic fate or just keep their marriage and their security intact. A spell to keep a husband faithful? That could be seen as pure self-preservation when your whole social and economic standing depended on him. And then there's just plain old desire, isn't there? That intense longing for someone specific, the agony of unrequited love, or those burning pangs of jealousy. These feelings could push anyone to extremes. When prayers and normal attempts at wooing didn't work, the forbidden idea of a magical fix, promising quick and powerful results, became incredibly tempting. These spells offered a dangerous but oh-so-seductive shortcut to getting what their hearts desperately craved. It's also worth remembering that magic back then wasn't always seen as totally separate from religion or science, not like we see it today. Some kinds of natural magic, using the hidden properties of herbs, stones, or star alignments, were sometimes practiced even by educated people, like doctors and priests, for healing or other supposedly good things. The lines were pretty fuzzy. While calling up demons was a definite no-no for the church, tinkering with planetary energies or the secret powers of plants, like you'd find in parts of the Picatrix, might have seemed to some like they were just tapping into a deeper understanding of God's creation, not making a pact with the devil. But the church got more and more suspicious of any attempt to force things or tell the future using these methods, especially if it involved spirits or seemed to go against God's plan. Ultimately, those grimoires, with their air of ancient secrets and hidden knowledge, promised power to people who felt like they had none. In a time of plagues, famines, and endless wars, being able to control even one tiny part of your life, like someone else's affection, could feel like a massive win. The risk was huge, absolutely, but sometimes the potential reward of love, security, or even just that heady feeling of wielding secret power in a world that usually left you helpless seemed worth it. So what's your take on all this? Was it real magic? A desperate grab for control in a chaotic world? Or something else entirely? I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. And hey, if you're into uncovering these kinds of hidden histories and diving into the forbidden knowledge of the past, definitely hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss where we're venturing into the shadows next. When you look at the world of medieval love spells, tucked away in those forbidden grimoires like the Key of Solomon and Picatrix, it's a pretty chilling window into a time when desire and danger walked hand in hand. These weren't sweet little charms. They were powerful rituals that people truly believed could tap into supernatural forces. And individuals risked their names, their freedom, even their lives, for a shot at controlling love. The sheer terror these practices caused and the savage punishments for those caught really highlight how worried people were about magic, about control, and about the wild, untamable power of the human heart back then. The stories of these forbidden books and the extreme things people did for love just go to show that our search for connection, and the crazy lengths we'll go to find it, is a story as old as time, and sometimes A pretty dangerous one, too.